All right, it's 3:30. Can I start now? Okay, cool. All right, welcome to ACME. All right, you're off. It's yours. We're starting.
Yeah, I'm, I'm driving them. So welcome to ACME, everyone.
We are missing the pink wall, by the way.
Well, yeah, that's downstairs. And the dog keeps jumping on top of me, so I'd rather not. So this is the Note 12. I'm sure you've seen it since it's Thursday and you've been in a meeting the whole week, so you've seen it several times. As they say in the apps, art area, note the Note well. So next slide.
Thank goodness the security area doesn't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a link to the agenda, to MeetEcho, and for issues. And we're going to start with Note 12 technical difficulties and administrivia. Do we have note takers?
We do. Carl is going to take notes for us.
Good. We allocated like 5 minutes for this, and we're only 1 minute in, and we're already through that. So we're ahead of time. Good. Then we're going to do document status, talk about current work items. That's just DTN node ID because there hasn't been much progress in the other stuff. And we're going to talk about potential new work. Right. So document status. Well, third meeting in a row that we don't have any new RFCs. The last one was published in September of last year. But we're going to break this bad streak because authority token is approved and it's going to be in the RFC editor's queue. So some chance of having it published before 116. Okay. ACME client has just been allowed to expire with no continued interest. ARI is now a working group draft. Authority token TN auth list, we've had versions 9 and 10 submitted since Philadelphia and still has some discusses that require a revision, but nothing that seems, to me at least, major.
So I think we have a status on this, right?
Yeah, right. As for DTN node ID, we're also going to talk about that, but latest revision is from September.
Can you go back one? Can you go back one?
Sure.
So I think we want to talk about the ACME, the authority token and the TN auth list a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Roman Danilio, responsible AD, and yeah, talking about the DTN one. I don't know which slide kind of we want. I want to get a sense for what the plan is here, because I'm starting to feel like we took this document too early. So as I rewind the history, we started the document, then DTN changed on us. We had to rev the document, and then we revved it, and then we were ready to go ahead, and then we decided, no, wait, there's registry stuff, so DTN needs to make another change for us, and we've been waiting a really, really long time. It seems like we need to rewind all the way back, park it, and wait for DTN to tell us how to play it.
So we have Brian doing a briefing, like a 5-minute briefing on this in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I jumped too
quickly.
quickly.
Can we do the TN auth one now? So now go back one slide. Sorry, a little discombobulated. Okay.
Yeah.
So ACME authority token and the TN auth. So authority token is good to go, right? We're good on that one. It's the TN auth one
that's correct. Yeah, there's still some lingering issues there. I'm sorry. This is John Peterson. I'm not going to put myself in the queue, but yeah. So we do still have some work to do on that. I know I've been talking to Chris Wendt a bit this week about it, and so we expect to have that shortly.
Okay.
I'm not personally editing that one, but yeah, we did take our authority token at least.
So do you think shortly is like next week or next month or next year or
let's say in December.
December. Okay, well that's not too far. That's a couple of
that's next month.
A couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know I'm out of pocket pretty much until then anyway. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's small changes, right?
Yeah, it just needs to be done, and it's just a question of who's tokens this is going to end up with among the author
Okay.
team.
We want to get this done, right?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, Roman, I mean, I completely concur. I think they are very small changes. We just need to make some quick edits.
Okay. All right. Lean on him. Okay, cool. All right. So now we
Okay.
can go to the next one.
Yeah, so DTN node ID, in a minute we'll talk about. ACME integrations, there's a new version from September. It's in AD evaluation and still a revised AD needed.
So this one we've got expired personal drafts. This is the TEEP Elliott Lear one. So I don't know what the plan is here. And they're not, is Michael Richardson in the room? No. So I don't know what the plan is here, but I think we need to chase them a little bit. Because I don't, how much time does Elliott have to be posting TEEP drafts? Anyway, that's that one. Okay.
Okay, so next. And there's ACME subdomains, no new revision, and it's in IETF last call.
And that one should be fine, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so with that done, we can move to the promised DTN node ID presentation. So could you?
All right, Brian. I think Yoav can drive the slides for you if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Either way.
Either way. Yeah.
So I'm Brian Cephas, APL. You can switch to the next slide. So there was a -10 release that corrected some typos and added some explanations of what is the experimental nature of this protocol. And it's experimental in the sense of the DTN doing what it needs to do side, and not experimental in the sense of will it be usable and testable, and will it properly integrate with the ACME client. And then one last little bit is that the hash algorithms that this was referencing have made it to RFC 9054, which is good. The issue remaining, and what Roman had mentioned earlier, is that it's a bit of a bookkeeping issue. That is, we're allocating a code point. We need a place to put the code point. There was an IANA registry, but it was not properly updated in the DTN working group. As actually, in between the time these slides were prepared and today, the DTN working group has adopted the document that corrects the IANA registry. And at this point, it seems like if ACME working group is happy with this document as is, and it can live in a state that is waiting in a kind of an approval cluster with the associated DTN document that updates the IANA registry, then they can travel through later stages together. The only thing that that other companion document does is update the IANA registry. So it's very small. It's uncontroversial in what it's doing, and there's agreement that it's needed.
So is it a working group item of DTN now or no?
It is now, yes.
Hi, Roman Danilio, responsible AD. So we are currently sitting in this document in a halfway state. It is out of the working group. It's in my hand. So we have not yet sent it to the ISG. Given where we've been with this document, I'm going to keep it there until I see the DTN document progress a little further, because practically there's no difference between keeping it in MISREF versus here, and this document would get discussed on anyway for not having the kind of the IANA thing sorted out. So it's one, whatever the expression, half dozen or kind of another. So we're going to kind of park it until we move forward.
And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Knowing that the only dependence here is where to put the code point, not any more complicated interrelationship. So the fact that there's a code point being allocated and it's going into a registry, that's all that matters for the dependency.
Okay,
and we don't care
I think from an ACME
about the
point of view,
specific code point or anything.
right. So I think we're squared away from an ACME point of view. I think from a DTN point of view, Stephen and I are going to go talk to somebody sometime about other parts of DTN, maybe algorithm choices, perhaps things like that. But we'll handle that offline. That's obviously not Acme business. So, all right. So if Roman's happy, and it's a working group draft, I think we're good. We'll let it sit for the minute. It's just we have
Call
like
it,
400 drafts sitting in like limbo at this point, right?
yeah, we'll call it parked with the AD.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is. It's AD follow-up external review requirement.
Right.
Mm.
Right. And it's like we've got 4 drafts like this, so it's a little weird, right? So no, the TN drafts and the
No, it depends on what you say, what all the other drafts are. This one is the only one notionally parked, which is
okay, that's
we're waiting literally for someone else to do something that's outside the working group. All the other documents, we actually very concretely know what needs to get done, and the power to change it is inside the working group.
okay.
So that's why I'm distinguishing it. I mean, from the perspective of the working group, yes, they are all with me. If you nuance it from my perspective, the actions are controllable for the working group for the other 3.
That's fine.
Yeah.
As long as it's your problem. All right, cool. All right.
Okay, thank you. So next up is the device attestation. Brandon?
So they gave me a clicker. I'm not quite sure what the clicker does. You want to try the clicker?
I'll try.
Let's see what happens with the clicker.
Hello, everyone.
Who knows what the clicker? I have no idea what the clicker does.
Where do I point it?
It does
I
something
mean,
with
it
the
doesn't make any
USB of
sense
your
for the
laptop.
clicker to work.
No,
Because
it's
he's got the slides and
I'm driving them.
Whoa!
Not me.
No, that was me.
That was. You can hold the clicker up and click it, and then he'll just change the slides. It's like saying next slide.
Next slide, please.
Awesome.
All right, so changes from when this was presented at Philadelphia, fairly small. The first one was clarifying that in this draft, we are not going to attempt to specify every single possible way you validate an attestation, which is really hard, and there's a whole working group rats for that. And the second is there was discussion at 114 about if we should reuse the identifiers from WebAuthn exactly as they're specified in WC3, or if we should create a new IANA registry. And the consensus was create a new registry. So I added the text that Carl added to his draft, which is encapsulating the exact same types of attestation into my draft. So thank you, Carl. Next slide, please. So since Philadelphia, all of the discussion on the mailing list and in person has been about the encapsulation format for attestation statements / evidence, if Hank is in the room. So there's 3 concurrent drafts.
Hank does not come to Acme.
I got yelled at last year for misusing attestation terms. I think the correct term is evidence, but no one hold me to that.
Okay, we won't tell him.
So there's 3 concurrent drafts at the IETF that all attempt to essentially do the same thing, which is take a vendor-specific attestation evidence. This can be either an X509 certificate with an extension, or this can be, in the TPM case, a bunch of byte arrays, and include them either in a certificate request in the case of the first 2 drafts, or in a TLS handshake in the last draft. Or middle draft is the TLS handshake. It seems to everyone I've spoken with that the best course of action is to have all of these drafts use the same encapsulation format. Since 114, the Carl Wallace's draft has been adopted, so that's actually wrong. It's draft LAMPS key attestation now. And the TLS draft has had a revision that actually now moves away from the same encapsulation format that the other 2 drafts use. So this is the thing I think that needs the most feedback from the working group. Specifically around how do we coordinate between the different IETF working groups to get to the same format. And in the case of the TLS draft, how do we coordinate with an external industry consortium that is also discussing the same thing?
All right, we have a comment. We have Yaron. Yaron, do you want to talk?
I only read the middle one. I actually spent some time with editors this week. I think it goes beyond format. It goes into use cases and how do you get a certificate versus an attestation document, and whether the one contains the other or vice versa or both. When you actually look at the use case of how to set up this whole system, it becomes really complicated, and you guys better coordinate these things. Even saying that there are use cases like IoT that need one way of doing it, and enterprise use cases that need the other way of doing it, but putting it on the table and reaching some sort of agreement. Thank you.
Yeah, multiple attestation schemes use X59 certificates as containers for attestation evidence. And then those are DIR encoded and stuck into the encapsulation. So in my draft, that's borrowed from the WebAuthn attestation statement. So it's just a CBOR key value pair. The key exists in the IANA registry for the attestation formats, and the value is whatever vendor specific thing. I suspect long-term sticking evidence into X59 certs as a container is not the desired outcome, but that's the environment we currently have. I guess if there's no more discussion about this, next slide. So since 114, there's actually been 2 implementations of the draft that are not by me. The first exists buried deep inside Apple's managed device attestation feature that exists in iOS 16 and tvOS something. And it also exists in the STEP CA Certificate Authority. It's an open source ACME CA developed by SmallStep. And I believe these 2 interoperate as of today. And that's the end of my slides. Is there any feedback around progressing to working group adoption, or any other feedback about the attestation formats?
So I think we need to get eyes on this document, right? We need more review of it. When I looked at it, your security section basically points to WebAuthn, which is sort of fun. I mean, we can adopt it before you're solidified with what the types are, but I mean, eventually they have to. I don't know whether it makes sense to have all these little disparate device attestation types, right?
Brennan, can you, is this, do I understand correctly that there are other parts of this that need to come from other working groups? All those other documents that you mentioned?
Yeah, so the draft that's at the LAMPS working group is very similar in concept, except instead of extending ACME, it's extending CMP, EST, and one I forgot. CMC.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm seeing that they're all draft somebody name of working group rather than draft IETF name of working group.
Not the
So they're not
LAMPS.
adopted.
The LAMPS one's been accepted, right?
The lamps have been adopted. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's nothing on here that references rats, but this somehow feels related to rats.
I just don't want us to end up way ahead of the rest of the IETF, like on the other thing. Yes, Richard.
nothing wrong with being in the lead, Yoav. I was just going to do a little bit of sharing from the floor and suggest that like this seems like something where the broad outlines are clear. You know, the use case is clear, the approach is clear. There's nuances to be worked out in terms of some of the coordination stuff that's been mentioned, but I think this is more than ready for an adoption call. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and call for that.
Okay, thanks. I'll channel Sean from the Zulip room. I will offer to review, but based on my initial review, this looks good to start at. Yes. So, Carl.
Just wanted to address Deb's point about there are lots of different types. That's intended. This draft is basically an abstraction layer for stuff that exists in the wild, because we're not going to have a draft per thing that exists. So the WebAuthn gives us a means to say that we're supporting an Apple attestation or a Google attestation or a Yubico attestation or what have you through that format. Where we diverged, and I haven't read the draft yet, but just from talking with the authors of the TLS, they've added another abstraction layer due to a use case, as mentioned a moment ago, so that WebAuthn is still there, but it's just bumped down one level. So it's maybe sub-ideal, but it's still roughly,
but it's still one layer of abstraction away from what you have here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the mechanism in this draft and the draft in LAMPS are the same. Lots of plagiarism.
Okay. Okay.
From me, I should say.
Okay. So why don't we go to the list and ask for adoption then? I think that's fair, right? So
anyone opposed to asking for adoption? Guess not. Okay.
Pardon? Oh, do you pardon? I didn't hear you. Can you say that again?
Oh, sorry. I asked if anybody in the room or on Zulip is opposed to asking for adoption. And I got silence, so I guess nobody is.
I thought we didn't call people out here. Okay, so we'll ask on the list for adoption, and then we'll see what happens. We do need more review, though, I think, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Don't take the clicker with you. Did you give me my clicker back? My useless clicker?
It's on the corner of the table.
No, I know. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's useless, right? So.
Okay. Hello, Antonius. Let's.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Thank you. Greetings from Switzerland. I'd like to present a new proposal here, DNS account 01. So next slide, please. We already know DNS01. It is an existing challenge and it is specified in RFC 8555. Next slide, please. Basically, it works with storing a random value in a TXT record under _ACME-challenge. Next slide, please. However, some people just have a DNS server that cannot easily be automated. Maybe it reads a zone file from disk, doesn't play well with ACME clients. So a frequent setup is to have a CNAME record to a DNS server that supports an API or a database on the backend or something like that. So this setup exists and it has a few problems. Next slide, please. One of the use cases we've heard about is multi-region deployments, where a service exists in a deployment where there are multiple regions that are independent from each other. So the operators do not want any dependencies. Basically, all but one regions can go down and the service would still be able to function. Next slide, please. Another scenario we've seen is zero downtime migrations. Maybe someone is moving from a cloud provider, for example, to an on-premises setup, and this migration can take months, like multiples of the lifetime of short-lived certificates. So they need to be able to issue certificates from both the old setup and the new one in order to ensure that the service continues to work. Next slide, please. And in all of these scenarios, like people don't want to have to run every 60 days. They don't want to have to go and run certbot there and SCP the private keys around. and do any of these things. And they also don't want to have any downtime. Like when they do the migration, they want the certs to be already there. They don't want to change the records and then just hope that like for a few minutes until the TLS certs can be issued, traffic will be dropped. And in general, some of them, either for compliance reasons or operational reasons, they try reliability. They try to have no dependencies between those regions. So next slide, please. The problem here is that if you have a CNAME record, it has to point to somewhere. It has to point to a DNS server. Next slide. But you cannot have two CNAME records. Due to how DNS works, you just can't have two CNAME records that point to the old and the new setup, or to 5 CNAMEs, one per region. Next slide, please. So that's why we're proposing to address these regions and a few others. We're proposing DNS account 01. We don't intend to replace DNS 01 with this. This is just an additional challenge that we want to introduce. Next slide. This is what the label looks like. Instead of just underscore ACME-challenge, it also has an ID. And next slide. Here you can see the first point, which is this unresolved, let's say, comment. And it is the use of the underscore there. Why is it not a dash? The standard works. There are no problems even if it becomes a dash. The reason we did that was basically so the fields can be separated, because ACME and challenge are technically the same field. So we wanted to separate it visually better, but there is no technical concern there. Like, we're happy to change it if you want. Next slide, please. So about this ID here, what is it? How is it generated? In the next slide, you can see that we basically take the ACME account resource URL. This is defined in the RFC 8555. And we calculate the hash of it. We take the first 10 bytes, and then we base 32 this entire thing. And the reason we chose the account URL is because every region or every service you use has a different ACME account. So it works fairly well to separate between them. If we did it per CA, it may not have been flexible. And it also survives ACME account key rollovers. So you can replace the keys, and you still have the same ID there. And the reason we picked 10 bytes is so we needed something that does not have a lot of collisions. It's not long enough to create problems with DNS, and it's also exactly at the block size for base 32, so it doesn't have any padding in the end, like the equal signs. Next slide, please. Here you can see another comment we received, like, how do we denote the first 10 bytes? Because in some programming languages, like, the last digit is excluded. We just opted for the mathematical notation, and we also define it in the text that this means the first 10 bytes. Next slide, please. So here, every region or every use case, it has basically a different ACME, a different DNS label. So you can create as many of them as you want, and you can CNAME each one individually and have them point to your automatable DNS server. Next slide, please. Although ACME is not about only web PKI and publicly trusted CAs, we wanted to make sure that it works well for this use case. We looked at the next slide. We looked at the CAB forum baseline requirements. Section 32247, it allows issuance. So any publicly trusted CA can use it today if they want to. We don't have to go through any ballots. We don't have to get any approvals. It can start working today. Basically, that's the presentation. In the next slide, you can see some resources, like the draft and the URL of the data tracker. And the rest of the time, about 2/3 of it, I think, we have for questions or comments.
So Richard's making comments in the chat. I don't know whether he wants to come to the mic or not.
Yeah, they're all about the notation, the 0 to 9 notation.
Yeah, that's super minor stuff. There's like every answer to that is wrong, and it's just you know the question of having the text clarified. So that's not a big deal. I seem to recall we had a bunch of discussion on the list about various options here, and this is the one that seems to meet all of the requirements. So this seems like reasonably put together. I would be ready for an adoption call on this.
Great, thank you.
So the question is going to be how many people have read the draft? And couple. Not so what?
Oh yeah, I'd like a few worked examples,
exactly,
but
exactly, right.
okay.
So we do need to get a little bit more review on the list, I think, and then we'll be happy to ask for adoption, I think.
Okay,
Richard
great.
raised his hand, so there you go.
Can I add a few notes as well, since we have some time? We've posted something on MDSP for Mozilla to try to get to see if there are any problems with that, and they were happy with the solution. And we have a working implementation in a testing environment for over 2 years now, and in production, limited though not available to many people for a few months now. So there is also implementation of this.
Quick question. You may have covered this, but I seem to recall the CAB4 baseline requirements constrain what validation methods are acceptable in the web PKI. Is that going to require some adjustment to accommodate this mechanism?
No, it will not. In the previous slide, you can see the section. Basically, any value that any DNS label that starts with an underscore and it is immediately after the domain that you want to validate works. And DNS01 is the only challenge that works for wildcard certificates as well, which is one of the main issues people had with the other challenges. So it shouldn't require anything from the CAB forum, and it can be used today.
Cool.
So I think
Thanks.
we have Tim at the mic.
Yeah, Tim Hallebeek for Digistert. Apologies for not using the automated thing. I think you might actually have a few CAB forum problems that you haven't anticipated. And in particular, because it looks like, I just reviewed this really quickly, but it looks like the validation method that's for ACME basically says use 8555, and 8555 says ACME challenge and doesn't have support for this additional stuff that you're adding. So I think that you would have to update the validation methods to allow this.
Okay, we will have to have a look at this one. This is the first time we received this feedback, and we can check again. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, more than happy to discuss this with you on the list and help you figure it out.
Of course, yes. Thank you very much.
To be sure, CABF have a pretty good streamlined process. If something needs to go through a ballot, it's fine. It's not a big, the IETF is slower.
Yeah, if it's something that needs to be done, we're happy to do it as well, of course. We just didn't think from our interpretation that there were any requirements, but we'll discuss this later.
Sure. So, seeing as nobody else is in the queue, I'll ask the same question I asked last time. Is anyone opposed to doing an adoption call on this? Because the feedback I got in the Zulip room is pretty positive. Word, yeah, seems fine and sane, kind of gets repeated. So I see no objections, at least for an adoption call. Okay, I think we can do that then.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that out of the way, all we're left is with this slide. Do we have any other business? Okay, not all at once. Okay. Seems like we're done here and we can all
So
have some cookies
25 minutes
until,
back into your life, right?
yeah. And we can have cookies until sec dispatch.
Right. More time to get across the hotel.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And maybe I'll really be in the actual room next time.
You better be.
Yeah. I haven't been in an ACME meeting in 3 years. Okay.
It's okay. We will see you later.
Right. See you all.
But he
Bye.
wasn't in the room.
Yeah, I was in the hotel room. It's sort of.
He was in the hotel, but he wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay.
That was not meant to be mean. Thanks for the notes, Carl.
That's right, you've got 2 hats. Yeah.